Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
I know, Josh, you like to be clear on things, right? Whenever we make a mistake, you like to bring in like a segment about corrections or clarifications. So, yes, so you're saying you called that. But like, how many times on this podcast did you say that the Washington Nationals franchise is cursed and they would never win?
Well, they were until this year.
So did something break the curse? Was it Bryce Harper's leaving?
That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, curses are complete hooey. It's absolutely something made up by fans to make themselves feel better. There's no such thing.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
I'm Josh in Toronto.
And I'm Skip in Montreal.
In today's episode, a grammar lesson.
Some people get fired.
And some people get hired.
But first, a recap of the past month.
Okay, Skip, I often start the show by saying that it feels like we haven't spoken in a long time, but this time we actually haven't spoken in a long time, and there's like a laundry list of things that have happened that we need to go through.
I have a huge list.
But I've noticed that you've been keeping yourself busy because I did a search on my podcast app for your name, and you keep coming up in all these searches. You're on every single show on the air these days.
Well, I was a guest on a couple of shows run by the same fellow, Gerald Glassford, out in Las Vegas. He had me on his fantasy football show a couple weeks ago, and then just yesterday he released an episode I was on with him on his podcast called The Lakers Fast Break, which is an NBA podcast.
Yeah, I can't believe that you, a Celtics fan, was on a Lakers show, but anyhow.
Well, that's why he asked me. That's why he specifically asked me to come on. He wanted to get the lowdown of the Eastern Conference and see where the Lakers-Celtics rivalry is at.
You got this whole other like side career going now. You're a guest on all these shows. But I have to tell you,
maybe.
I have to tell you, you sent me a text a few weeks ago, and it really bugged me because you did something that really bugs me. You told me how you were going to be a guest on another show, except what you wrote in the text was, I'm guesting on another podcast. So you basically took a word that isn't a verb and made it into a verb, which is one of my biggest pet peeves.
Grammar police.
I had a feeling that when I was writing that text and I used the word guesting, I was like, I actually asked myself, is that a word? And then I was like, well, it's just a text, so it is now, but I guess not in your universe.
No, there's too many people that take words and convert them into verbs when they're not, and it really bugs me. But that's a story for another
when two
day.
teams play each other, and they're versing.
Well, that too, but there's better examples than that. Like
Right.
When someone gets taken off the ice in a stretcher, he was stretchered off. Stretchered is not a word. Or
stretcher is
or one of my most hated ones, when someone is given an offer sheet, he was offer sheeted, but offer sheeted is not a word.
I only heard that for the first time this summer. Like, honestly, that was completely fabricated.
So anyway,
all right, we can go on and on with the grammar, right? But let's get into sports. I don't know where you want to start.
So I made a list of everything that happened since the last time we spoke. So if I could just go through the list and then we can go into detail on whichever one we want to later.
You just made the list.
Let's do it.
So this
I have the
is
same list. Let's see how they compare.
Right. So it's a long list, so bear with me. So in basketball, the Duke Blue Devils have won 6 games. This is everything that's happened since the last time we spoke. Duke Blue Devils have won 6 games. In football, J.J. Watt got injured again and will miss the rest of the season again. Myles Garrett swung a helmet at another player and was suspended by the NFL for the rest of the season, including the playoffs and possibly longer. 3 QBs with the same last name, Josh Allen, Kyle Allen, Brandon Allen, all won on the same day. It was the first time that's ever happened.
That's wild.
In baseball, MLB handed out all their regular season awards, and Mike Fiers snitched on the Houston Astros, and now there's an ongoing investigation around sign stealing in baseball.
Right.
In hockey, Don Cherry was fired, Mike Babcock was fired, Sheldon Keefe was hired, Victor Mete scored 2 goals in 1 game, and all 7 Canadian NHL teams played against an American team in an American city on the same day. It was the first time that's ever happened. In soccer, which we talk about
that's
all
a
the
stat
time,
I've never heard. Yeah.
Thierry Henry was hired as the head coach of the Montreal Impact, and your boy Jose Mourinho got a new job. And in other news that has nothing to do with sports, a new Randy Watkins commercial aired for the first time. And finally, last but not least, the President of the United States was impeached. Okay, maybe that last thing didn't actually happen, but everything else did.
Right. I have a couple of things that you didn't mention.
Okay.
Believe it or not. So in hockey, Capitals Garnet Hathaway spat on someone. In college basketball, Evansville beat Kentucky. College football, there was some news. You didn't really go into college football. The biggest spread I ever saw in my life, Ohio State versus Rutgers, where Ohio State was favored by 52. Failed to cover, by the way. Tua, injured, out for the season. And another big NFL news that you didn't talk about was the Colin Kaepernick tryout, no tryout, tryout, no tryout saga. Yeah, so that's everything.
Okay, so we're done our show. We've covered everything. Talk to you next week.
Okay, good. Perfect. Where did you want to, where do you want to start?
I don't know.
Do you want to,
you tell me.
Major League Baseball.
Well, we ended last time with baseball, so let's go with baseball to start. And the Astros, like, what do you make of this whole sign stealing biz?
Well, in general, I have no problem with sign stealing, because if you're not trying to steal signs, then you're not trying to win. And furthermore, if your team is letting your signs be stolen and you can't disguise them, then get better signs. But in this case, it's a little different because they used electronic equipment, a video camera and a monitor. So it's a little bit different. And, it's an advantage in this case to the home team because, they can set up things in their own stadium that the visiting team can't do. I have no problem with a runner at second base stealing signs because both teams can do that.
Right.
In this case, it's, I guess, again, it's a little different, and I'm obviously, I'm a little, I haven't made up my mind. I'm on the fence.
Have you seen some of the photos that came out of someone did screen grabs from the Astros 2017 World Series DVD? Did you see this?
No, I didn't.
In the DVD, in the video, you can see, and they did screen caps of, as soon as you enter the tunnel from the dugout, there's a desk there with a laptop on it and a chair that's empty at that point, and peanuts all around, showing that there was a guy sitting there all game eating peanuts with his laptop. And so the assumption is that's the guy, and there's a garbage can there, by the way. So he's not putting the peanuts in the garbage can, which is another story, but that's the guy who's watching the center field camera and banging on the garbage can for the off-speed pitches, right? So there's a few screen grabs from that show like the inside of the Astros tunnel with sort of the potential evidence of what they were doing.
What I don't believe is the reaction of the manager and the general manager pretending to have not known anything about this until last week. That I don't believe.
They're 100. The GM, I can give him maybe like 10 to 20% chance that maybe he doesn't know. Maybe the GM's not down in the clubhouse. He doesn't know what's going on. But the manager, he's right there with the players, Like, we always make fun of the fact that the managers wear a uniform, right? I mean, like, he's in uniform. He's there. He's in the dugout. He's sitting there. There's no way that he doesn't know. There's absolutely no way.
But the other thing that I'm surprised about...
Yeah.
Because I saw some video footage where you can, obviously they've enhanced the video or the audio so you can hear someone banging on a garbage can or something just before the pitch is thrown. But, when you're there, like, with the amount of people that are at the game and the distance from where this garbage can is to the pitcher's mound or to the batter's box, and there's all kinds of things like fans are yelling, and I don't know if you could actually hear that if you're the batter. I I don't know. I mean, I'd have to actually be standing in the batter's box with a full stadium, of like 20 or 30 or 40,000 people to know if it actually could work.
I was starting to think of all like the reasons, like exactly that, the reasons why like what they didn't make a difference. Because like you said, can they even hear it? And all the evidence we saw, how do we know that the banging of the garbage hasn't been enhanced so we could hear it, right? Like we don't know that. And the other evidence, and I don't want to defend the Astros, I don't want to defend them, but like they lost all the home games in the World Series.
This year they did, but not in 2017.
Yeah. Not in 2017. That's true.
In fact, they had a very good home record in the playoffs in 2017.
Absolutely. I mean, from all accounts, MLB and Rob Manfred are really mad at the Astros, and they're going to come down really hard. Like, that's everything I've heard, like, is that the punishment's going to be severe. Like, fines in the millions of dollars, right? And forfeiture of draft picks and stuff like this. And you know what? I think it should be more. They should follow the NFL's rule, and I'm sure you've heard this too, right? Where, a few years ago, the New Orleans Saints were caught that they had this bounty system where they were paying players or rewarding players for trying to injure other players, and the evidence was sort of inconclusive, conclusive, whatever it is. But like Sean Payton paid the price for that, and he was suspended, right? Mm-hmm. The head coach. Like, shouldn't the manager of the Astros be suspended for like 80 games?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't or a whole season.
I do think they should come down hard. I agree with you. I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to come down as hard as you think, and I don't think unless you tell the Astros that we're taking away your World Series title, which they're not going to do. I don't think they're going to care.
Matter. Yeah, you're right.
But
what do you think? What do you think the motivation of Mike Fiers was for being the whistleblower? I'm integrating the impeachment thing with the whistleblower.
I don't. It's a good question. I don't know why. If he was going to do it, I don't know why he waited till now to do it. Would you want that guy on your team ever again? Because that he's done that.
I don't know. I don't think so, right? But then again, he's kind of standing up for all his fellow pitchers, right? And
the thing is, I'm
standing up for fair play, isn't he?
I'm willing to bet you that, in fact, I'm 100% certain that the Astros are not the only team that's done this.
Well, maybe not to this. Well, do you think to this extent with a whole video system? You're right. I guess they're not.
I don't know. I can't. It can't be. They can't be the only team that's tried to do this.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
That's my feeling.
Well, I guess we'll see where it goes, right? We'll see what the punishment's going to be. I think you may be right, though, that the MLB's not going to really do much. They just want to sweep it under the rug, and just sort of let's not talk about this anymore.
I think they're going to do exactly what you said. I think they're going to fine them lots of money and they're going to take away draft picks, but I don't think the Astros are going to care that much about that. And
no, and that's not deterring anybody from doing
right.
it. Right.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm pretty sure other teams have done this. It's like when you hear about a guy who gets caught taking PEDs. So, there's 2, 3, maybe 4 guys a year that you hear about. There's probably a dozen other guys that do it that you don't know about.
Yeah, because they're cheating the test or they're ahead of the testing.
Exactly. So that's what it is to me. I mean, in general, I have no problem with sign stealing if you do it the old-fashioned way, but with the technology, I'm not on board with that.
Okay. I wanted to segue quickly to the MLB awards. There was really no surprises with any of the awards. Trout, Bellinger with the MVPs, Verlander, DeGrom with the Cy Youngs, Pete Alonso with the Rookie of the Year in the NL, and then Yordan Alvarez, a little bit of a surprise as the Rookie of the Year in the American League. But what I really wanted to point out to you, I don't know if you saw the Gold Glove Awards, but thankfully Juan Soto did not win a Gold Glove for the outfield in the National League.
That is thankful.
Just to update you on that, yeah.
The only 2 awards I was interested in were the Manager of the Year in both the AL and the NL, and the 2 managers that should have won did win because Mike Schilt of the Cardinals and the
Rocco
manager
Baldelli.
And Rocco Baldelli of Tampa Bay really had very little to work with and somehow made the playoffs, and both of them deserved to win Manager of the Year, and both of them did. So thank God for that.
Very nice. Yeah. Did you know? I just saw something earlier today about the Gold Gloves. Did you know, and I looked it up, and it's been going on since 2011, but somehow I only found out about it today, that they give a platinum glove for the best fielder of all the Gold Glove winners. Had you heard of this?
I didn't know that, no. Is that new?
I saw this thing. It says platinum glove, Nolan Arenado. Platinum glove in the American League, Matt Chapman. So I looked up what it is, and apparently it's some kind of vote, but it's been going on since 2011. But yet somehow I've only heard about it in 2019, which is kind of strange. So Nolan Arenado is considered the best fielder in all of the National League, regardless of position.
I think he's won every year he's been in baseball, in Major League Baseball.
I think you're right.
That's
And
impressive.
actually, I think he could probably win Gold Glove even if he played shortstop. So
That's impressive to win every single year that you've been in the league. That's impressive.
absolutely.
The National Hockey League.
All right, so let's segue to the next topic. The topic that was the biggest topic in Canada the last few days, and took over your TV, and it took over probably the city where you live, which is Toronto, which is the firing of Mike Babcock. Like, how are people, like, what's the reactions? Are people defending him? Are people happy? Are people nervous? Like, what's the read on the city there in Toronto?
First of all, before we even get to that,
Yeah, okay.
you know how TSN has annoyed me many, many times in the past.
Oh, they outdid themselves this time.
They certainly did, because I was, as I do every day, watching PTI, which starts at 5:30, and I'm enjoying my episode of PTI, and then they do 5 good minutes with somebody, and then they go to commercial. They come back from commercial, and they do the end of the show, the last 5 minutes. But lo and behold, the last 5 minutes on Wednesday were nowhere to be found. Because all of a sudden, when they came back from commercial, it's not PTI anymore. They cut away to breaking news about Mike Babcock, which annoyed me so much because, like I said, there was only 5 minutes left in the show. And then what is on at 6 o'clock on TSN? Sports Center, where you're going to talk about Mike Babcock. So you couldn't just wait 5 minutes and let us see the rest of the show?
That's a programming mistake, and that's every network trying to be like the first one with the news. They always everybody wants to be first, because the program director at TSN probably thinks if we wait that extra 5 minutes, everyone's going to watch sports now.
And maybe they will, but I don't care. You could have left
PTI.
Maybe,
I'm not saying
you could have left PTI on one of the 5 channels.
It's so true. I hate that there's 5 Sportsnets and 5 TSNs, yet somehow we only get the same thing on each network. We get 4 things going on and 5 things going on the same channel on TSN all the time. It happens every week, no?
I mean, there are times where they put different things on. It's rare, but Sportsnet is better at it than TSN. But this just annoyed me. Anyway, as for the firing, the whole thing annoyed me because, correct me if I'm wrong, when they hired Mike Babcock, first of all, everyone in Leafland was drooling all over themselves, saying, "Oh my God, we just hired the best coach on the planet. We're going to win 10 Stanley Cups," or whatever it was. And I think they hired him.
And those same people now are like, he's a bum, he's old school, he's old fashioned, he's past his prime, he's a dinosaur, get rid of him. The same people, right?
Exactly, yes. So, like, make up your mind. If you thought he was the best coach since sliced bread when he was hired, all of a sudden now he's the worst coach. Now, he's not the best coach and he's not the worst coach. He's somewhere in between.
Right.
But to give a guy, I think it was an 8-year deal. What coach gets an 8-year deal? I mean, if you think, I'm pretty sure he was given an 8-year contract, I think $5 million a year. And if you look at all the 4 major team sports, I can only think of one coach in all of them that has been around with the same team for more than 8 years.
Well, Bill Belichick.
That's it. Can you think of anyone else?
I can't think of off the top of my head. Definitely no one in the NHL, because the coaches move around like crazy.
Yeah.
Baseball. No, there's no way.
I mean,
it's impossible.
Bruce Bochy was there for a while, but he's not anymore.
Mike Matheny was there for the Cardinals, but now he's gone. The Red Sox and the Yankees change their managers all the time. Who's the manager of the Angels?
Well, now it's Joe Madden.
Yeah, it was Sosha, but he's not there anymore.
He wasn't even there last year.
Yeah, so baseball's out. Football, well, we all know Belichick. For a while, Cincinnati Bengals had the same coach for a long time, but finally they got rid of him, so he's not there anymore.
Somehow Jason Garrett has been around for a long time. I don't know how.
Actually, he might be the answer to your question, Jason Garrett. Yeah, that might be the answer to the question.
And then how long has Doc Rivers coached the Clippers?
It's close to... It's not 8 years yet. There's no way.
So anyway, the fact that they
way.
gave him an 8-year deal was ridiculous in the first place, and that they gave him
Yeah.
a stupid amount of money. And I actually don't think, even if Sheldon Keefe goes on to win the Stanley Cup, I still think it was a mistake, because they're paying Mike Babcock millions of dollars to sit at home and do nothing right now.
Well, they don't care about the money, obviously.
They don't.
No?
But I mean, think about this for a minute. What they did, they took the easy way out. They took the lazy way out. The problem wasn't the coach. The problem is the roster. First of all, they've spent, if you take their top 4 or 5 players, they've spent way too much money on their top 4 or 5 guys, leaving them no money for the rest of the roster, which is why they have, one of the weakest defense cores in the league. And that was their biggest weakness. So, I mean, any coach, I don't care if you're the best coach, the worst coach, I've said this 100 times, the coach gets too much credit when the team wins and too much blame when the team loses. You can only work with what you have.
Yeah.
So I don't
you're
think
100% right.
I don't think Sheldon Keefe's going to make a huge difference. Of course, he won his first game because, the players are all like, whatever, we have a new coach, we better play well, yada, yada. But I mean,
I'm sorry, beating Arizona 3-1 is not should we plan the parade route now because they beat Arizona?
I'm sure people are. But like this team, the way it's built, whether it's Mike Babcock as the head coach or Sheldon Keefe as the head coach, the way it's built currently, they should make the playoffs. Yes, they should maybe win a round, maybe 2, but they're not built to win a Stanley Cup. This team can't compete with the Boston Bruins, and teams like that. So if they have to play the Bruins again in the playoffs, they're going to lose, regardless of who their coach is.
I mean, the legacy of Babcock is this talented team that everyone said is a super talented team, but they have not won a playoff round, right? And I guess the thinking in the upper management of the Leafs is like they're looking at the St. Louis Blues model of last year and said, this team, they were floundering, or like I guess they feel like we need to make this coaching change to make a spark, right? To somehow spark. It's more about the attitude than the X's and O's. And maybe, like, it's such a cliche to say, like, Babcock lost the room. That's all I hear this morning. Babcock lost the room. They weren't playing for him anymore. Like, you know what? After 10 games, this guy could lose the room. You don't know. Like, what? Like, it's if they still play lousy, it's not going to make a difference, right? So I guess they're really trying to just catch lightning in a bottle by a coaching change, which is kind of a desperation move, if you ask me. But
what the other thing that bugs me is, so now all this stuff, everyone digs up all this information on the new guy, on the new coach.
Yeah.
So he's been with the Marlies for a few years. He won a championship in the American Hockey League, and he's worked for Kyle Dubas before, I think, in the Ontario Hockey League. And so the guy played in the NHL, and I think in the 80s he played a couple of seasons or something. They're making this guy out to be like, oh, this is the perfect guy to coach this team because he's a communicator and this and that and the other. Like, give me a break. I never heard of this guy a week ago, and now you're telling me that this is the perfect guy to coach the team. If you actually thought that, then why wasn't he coaching the team before?
It's so true. To me, it looks like in the Leafs organization, you've had a split the last like 3 or 4 years, right? When it was Babcock and Lou Lamoriello against Shanahan and Dubas. Is that like what people are saying in Toronto? Like, that's the way I see it. And Dubas is slowly winning. Dubas is one out, right?
Yeah, it's very strange because, I mean, Lamoriello was there before Dubas was there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if I'm not mistaken, Shanahan's the one that hired Lamoriello. And then, they had this sort of plan that Lamoriello would be the GM for a couple years, and then Dubas would take over. And then, of course, Lamoriello, I guess, got angry and left, which I don't blame him.
He didn't like the direction it was going because it's very much analytic based, right? And I don't want to get into like this debate about analytics in hockey and where its place is and what it is, and like there's a place for it, but it can't run your whole team. And I don't know if it's running the whole team, but it's like I guess Lamoriello thought it was going to, right?
It was just very strange. I don't know why you would have 2 people on your staff, one of which is the general manager and the other one is the next general manager. Like, you're basically telling the current general manager, by the way, you're the GM now, but you won't be soon. So why would anybody want to be in that position?
Right.
And Lamoriello and Dubas could not be more opposite in every possible way. I'm not saying that, Lamoriello has had a lot of success in the NHL and Dubas actually hasn't really done anything. But the two of them could not be more opposite in every possible way.
Here's the quote from Kyle Dubas. Kyle Dubas says he asked the Leafs to have an ability to be uncomfortable through these stylistic changes so this team can play exactly as it was designed. So he's basically saying, I've designed this team and I have the wrong coach. They're not playing the way it's designed. It's utter nonsense. Honestly, it's utter nonsense.
Well, he didn't hire Babcock. He didn't.
I know, but what happened last year and what happened the year before when the Leafs had 100 points and everybody was on top of the world saying what a great team, think about last year when they signed Tavares. When they signed John Tavares, the hype around the Stanley Cup that was coming to Toronto, right? Were they playing the wrong style all that time? Was signing him the wrong? You know who the coach is, so it's just the whole thing is the whole thing reeks of just people pulling in different directions. The whole organization seems like a bit of a mess to me.
Anyway, look,
but whatever.
We'll see what happens, and maybe they'll play more offensive style hockey now with the new coach, and maybe they'll win games 6-4 or
5-4,
or whatever it is, and that's fine, and they should. It's still November. They should make the playoffs. But again, if they play a team like Boston in the playoffs, they're going to lose to Boston in the playoffs.
Now, I know you're not on Twitter, but I don't know if you're following what's going on with Mike Commodore and Mike Babcock. Former NHL defenseman Mike Commodore?
I know who he is. I haven't heard his name in years.
His Twitter feed, there's at least 10 to 15 tweets about Mike Babcock. Extremely negative. He hates Mike. I'm gonna read you one of them. I screenshotted one of them just to emphasize what he's writing. Hey, Mike Babcock. Simply put, your players quit on you. They quit on you because you're a terrible human being. You are an average coach with an extremely oversized ego. You finally got exactly what you deserve, you selfish prick. The hockey world is ecstatic. This is Mike Commodore writing this on Twitter, and there's 10 other tweets exactly like this.
Did Mike Commodore ever play for Mike Babcock?
I think so, yes, but
Mike Commodore was on the Calgary Flames.
He played on a million teams though, right? I guess, but I'm trying to find out where this feud started, and I really couldn't find anything where it started, and all I could find was that he might have called Commodore fat once. So anyways, that's where that begins and ends.
Listen, that's I applaud him for actually saying something, because usually when players or coaches say something, it's nothing. It's a waste of time. So this is actually sounds something. Real.
It sounds real, exactly.
It does. I mean, and I don't feel bad for the Leafs. I don't feel bad for Leaf fans. I don't feel bad for Mike Babcock because he's getting paid millions of dollars to do nothing. I think it's a huge waste of money. He's not even halfway through his 8 years. If you signed him for an 8-year deal,
money. Like I said, they don't care about the money.
But what were you? Never mind the money. What were you thinking when you signed him for 8 years? Were you thinking, we're going to fire him in 3.5 or 4 or whatever? Is that what you were thinking? And if that's what you were thinking, then why did you give him an 8-year deal?
Well, you're absolutely right. There's no point in. There's no hockey coach that lasts 8 years. So why are you giving him an 8-year deal? You're going to end up paying him for nothing, anyways. It's just nonsense. So let's get away from hockey. I know we're not going to talk too much about Don Cherry. It's a little too political for our podcast, I think. Let's just leave it at that. The whole Don Cherry thing's already old news, and I think people are sick of it.
The National Football League.
I'd like to talk about some football, if you don't mind. A little bit of combination NCAA and maybe NFL. That Myles Garrett thing is the story that won't go away. I mean, you heard yesterday he accused the Steelers quarterback of calling him a racial slur during that little before he ripped off his helmet and tried to kill him.
Yeah, I mean, if that actually happened, why did you wait 10 days before saying anything about it?
Yeah, it really rubbed me the wrong way. When I heard him come out and play the race card yesterday, I was like, there's so much racism in the world, honestly, right? There's so much racism in the world. Now you have to start making up racism? you know, to defend yourself, to get your paycheck. Like, honestly, it really sucked. It really, really sucked.
Listen,
and there's people defending him. There's people that believe him.
Yeah, I don't know what was said or what wasn't said, but what I do know is on a football field and on a basketball court, there is so much trash talking during a game. There is so much stuff said. Some of it is racial, some of it is not. Some of it is against a person's family or a person's mother or a person's wife or whatever. There's so much stuff that is said on the court and on the football field and also on the ice in hockey. And all of it is terrible. All of it is disgusting. But 90% of it, if you're smart, you basically just ignore it and continue playing. Because if you let it get to you, then that's the whole point. That guy is trying to get you off your game so that you don't focus and you make a mistake.
What people are not talking about in the Myles Garrett thing is the game was over. This is the last play of the game. So I don't care what happened, right? Garrett tried to injure Mason Rudolph on the last play of the game. He took a cheap shot at him. This is before he ripped off his helmet. Like, why are you taking a cheap shot at the quarterback with no time left on the clock and your team up by 14? Like, they're just running out the clock, right? So like, Mason Rudolph definitely had a right to be angry. The Steelers had a right to be angry even before he ripped off his helmet. Like, and honestly, I know you've heard it on other talk shows and other podcasts and read about it. If he connected with that helmet and hit him, we're not talking about this right now as suspensions or whatever. We're talking about, like, he's going to jail type of situation. We're talking about assault charges. We're talking about a whole other stuff in the real courts, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's where that's going. The whole thing just sucks, but I'll tell you what doesn't suck. In 2 weeks, actually less than 2 weeks now, not tomorrow, but next week, Steelers and the Browns are playing. And that is going to be good.
I mean, I was actually surprised that the Steelers lost that game, but because the Browns are not good at all.
You know what sucks for Browns fans? That I heard it's mentioned after the game, but then the whole suspension, indefinite, and the racism and all that took over. The Browns finally won a game. Like, they finally played well and they won a game. Browns fans should have been so happy, right? And then, okay, well, then there's this now, right? Their best defensive player's out, so now he's suspended for the year. And like, the Browns just suck. Honestly, they just suck. And the other thing that no one's talking about is there was 2 Browns defensive backs that were ejected in that game for cheap shots on Steelers wide receivers. Juju Smith-Schuster left the game because he got smashed in the head, right? So there was so much headhunting and dirty play even before the last play of the game, right? That's like ho-hum, you know, that happens every week in the NFL, you know? It's kind of, it's just rubbed me the wrong way. NFL is just such a mess.
I haven't watched much NFL football.
You're smart.
In the last
You're smart.
Since we last spoke.
You're smart to not watch. And to be honest, I've only watched the Eagles. And I'm not really watching much of the others because I'm kind of like a little bit turned off by some of the other stuff that's going on in the league. Of course, when the playoffs start, I'll be watching every game like every other sheep in the world.
The Eagles are in trouble.
Oh no, they're not a good team. Let's just get that straight. They can still make the playoffs, but they are not a good team. And I'm gonna keep cheering for them and whatever. But can you explain to me? Like, I don't understand the Colin Kaepernick stuff. Like, can you explain it? Because I can't explain it.
I don't think I can either. I mean, like, I think there's less of a chance that he ever plays in the NFL today than there was before he did his tryout.
Right. Right.
You know, apparently things got changed at the last minute. He moved the location of the workout.
I didn't understand the whole thing. Like, why is the NFL organizing the tryout? And then why did he want to move it? And then like. It seems like the NFL and him are both trying to control the situation, but like, for what reason? You know, like, for what reason? Like, just go on with it. You know, if you don't want to sign him, don't sign him. Like, he wasn't even a story, Kaepernick. No one was talking about him anymore. All of a sudden, the NFL organizes a tryout, like, to say for what purpose? And then he doesn't go. For what purpose? Like, I didn't get the motivation of both sides. The whole thing is just so stupid.
So I didn't even know until like 2 days before the workout that the lawsuit that he filed against the league was settled. I didn't even realize that. So now there's no more lawsuit. That was settled out of court, and we'll never know what the settlement was, but it was settled. So basically that means if it was settled, that he's free to sign with any team, and any team is free to sign him. And every team has known that for a while. So any team could have brought him in for a workout anytime they wanted to. And
no one's going to sign him.
I do believe that he is a better quarterback than some of the quarterbacks that are in the league now.
This is the year of the backup quarterback, Josh. How many backup quarterbacks are we seeing? Of course he's better than a lot of those backup quarterbacks.
And teams know this.
The NFL...
Like, if you asked every general manager privately, is Colin Kaepernick better than your starting quarterback or better than your second-string quarterback, off the record, I'm sure you'd get at least half the general managers in the league saying, yes, he is. So they know this.
But their fear of the circus that he's going to bring when they sign him, all the media attention and the circus it's going to bring around the team, outweighs his talent. No one is courageous enough to say, we're going to sign him, we don't care what happens. The only guy that would do that would be Belichick. Like, I'm not saying that the Patriots want to sign him, but they're the only organization that could say, we're going to sign him. We don't care what everybody says. And actually they're the last organization that's going to sign him because, like, Belichick and Brady are friends with Trump. So, like, as soon as Kaepernick kneels for the anthem, like, there goes that,
Well, you know what? This is the first year that Brady is actually not having a Tom Brady-like year, and I'm not suggesting that they're going to replace him at quarterback, but if there was ever a year that was going to happen, this would be the year.
It might be tomorrow, actually, because I read that they said he has a sore elbow, and he's actually listed as questionable.
They've listed him as questionable many times, and he's ended up playing every time.
As an Eagles fan, this would suck because the Eagles played the Patriots, and now the Cowboys have their turn against the Patriots. So, like, I don't want the Cowboys to have to play the Patriots when they're without their quarterback. That's not fair.
I've heard silly rumors like that the Patriots are considering calling Antonio Brown.
Well, I mean, they've already had him and let him go. No,
I know, but they're considering calling him again and saying, hey, we could use you because they acquired Mohamed Sanu, who was supposed to be the answer, but he's injured now.
Now he's hurt. Yeah. I don't think anybody's going to sign Antonio Brown till next year. It's going to be sort of like Kareem Hunt. The Chiefs let him go last year. He paid his dues. He went off in the corner, looked in the corner, stood in the corner for 5 minutes until the season was over. And then and when the season's over, then someone signed him. That'll be what'll happen with Antonio Brown. All right, last topic.
College basketball.
Okay, you didn't want to talk about Duke? I had written on a piece of paper. I'm holding it up here for those watching on News Channel 8.
Yes, I can't see.
And I wrote so many huge stories the past 2 weeks. Myles Garrett, Kaepernick, Tua, Babcock, Astros cheating. But Josh will start the show with Duke. And I was wrong. I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, I started the show by talking about you on other shows. But then when I went through my list of things, I did mention Duke.
Yeah, I know. Did you watch the game last night against Georgetown?
I did, and Duke didn't play well, really, actually. That's a game that
How do you like their team?
Well, that's a game that Duke should win easily. Georgetown's not even ranked, and Duke was losing the entire first half. They were down by 11 at one point in the first half. Of course, they came back to tie it, and then they took the lead. And by the way, Duke they got lucky because they got a lot of bad calls by the officiating, by the officials that went in Duke's favor that should not have happened. So I'm not saying...
Is that your first... Is that your first game of Duke, watching Duke this year?
No, it's the second. It's the second game I've seen this year. And so Duke got a lot of favorable calls. They played all right. And again, I mean, they beat Georgetown. They should beat Georgetown. If they play that way against a team like North Carolina, they're in trouble.
Well, they're playing Michigan State in a couple of weeks, so that should be interesting too, right?
Yeah, Michigan State's a good team.
It's an interesting Duke team, like when you see their talent, right? Because we all know the players that they lost, in Zion and Barrett and even Cam Reddish, but like they replaced them with a bunch of new freshmen who all look pretty good, right? But like obviously no one's going to have the star power of the guys that left, but I think maybe as a whole it might be a more well-rounded team. Don't you think?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, they use more players than they used to use.
Oh, it's crazy how many they
like
use.
I'm surprised
right?
how many of the bench guys
10.
play, and not only how many of them play, but how many minutes the bench guys get. I'm surprised because really, like, Jack White gets tons of minutes, but he does nothing. And Javin Delorier gets tons of minutes, and he does a little bit more than Jack White.
Right.
Even what's it called? Even Goldwire got minutes yesterday.
I know. Goldwire was starting the first game of the season against Kansas. Remember?
Yeah. So it's like, it's a little different. Like normally, Coach K likes to go with 6 guys, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. I feel like he's playing as much guys as he can, and as the season goes on, the bench is gonna shrink.
This guy who starts,
he's figuring out who his guys are right now.
One of the freshmen who starts, Matthew Hurt, he starts, but then you don't see him again almost the rest of the game. Like he doesn't play. I don't think I noticed him at all in the second half of the game.
I don't think he played the second half actually, or maybe just the first few minutes. I feel like with Matthew Hurt, he's very talented. Obviously, you saw him; he's quite a good shooter, especially for a guy his size. But like, if he's not on his game, we're just not. Coach K is just not going to use him, right? The guy who's really impressed me yesterday, who hadn't done much up till then, was Wendell Moore, who looks like a real star, right?
Actually, my favorite player currently, and this could change on a daily basis, but yesterday was Cassius Stanley was my favorite player.
Cassius Stanley's a beast. Like he's a crazy athlete, right? And I think he's just the kind of guy who's day in, day out, he's going to bring in the work and chip in all kinds of different ways. It's just an interesting team. Like it's a less talented team that they had last year, but I feel like they have as much of a chance for a national championship as anybody else. Don't you? I mean, they're a number 1 team in the country right now.
Yeah. I mean, listen, there's probably like 8 teams that have a chance to win it all. There's no team that's running away with it. And on November 23rd, we're not going to say, this team is definitely winning. So I mean, the last couple of years, Duke has gone to the Elite 8, I think, and lost. And, they probably can go to the Elite 8 again this year. And then once you get there, it all depends because you never know. It depends who you're playing against. Depends on the matchups. Do you have a good shooting day, a bad shooting day? So it's like, you have to wait and see. It's not, it's not like those Duke teams that you knew at the beginning of the season where you were saying, are they going to go undefeated? There's no chance this team's going undefeated. Zero chance of that.
They may not even win the ACC.
Right, they may not, and it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they do or don't.
No. The whole thing is it's about getting better as you progress. By the time you get to March, you don't want to be playing your best. That's all. And where do you rank Evansville?
Well, I mean, it was pretty cool that they won that game.
It was amazing.
I mean, I don't think they're a tournament team.
No, of course not. I know you like to bring in the gambling edge to things. So you know that Kentucky was 24.5 point favored in that game.
And they certainly did not cover.
No, they did not.
Well,
and the other crazy stat is Kentucky paid Evansville $90,000 for the game.
That happens that happens all the time, by the way.
Yeah, no, of course, right, because the little schools want to play the big schools to get like high profile, right?
Right, they need the money because the little schools can't make money any other way, so they play these big schools knowing they're going to lose, but they get this injection of cash that helps them, like that could fund their whole program for the whole season.
Right, crazy. It could. It really could. It's awesome. Wow, we covered a lot, Josh. We really covered a lot. It's great. I mean, we left some stuff on the table. We'll maybe pick it up next week.
One thing we didn't mention is, so the 3-point line in college basketball was moved further back this year, and I'm very pleased about that new rule change.
It's great. There's the other rule change too about the shot clock after you get an offensive rebound.
What's that one?
Well, it's like if you when you get an offensive rebound, the shot clock doesn't reset all the way back to 30. It's like
oh yeah, okay. Well, did they not have that last year?
It's not No, NBA did, but it's not 14 seconds. I forget the number, but it's a shorter number. So it's a smaller number. So it's going to like promote that will change the dynamic of tournament games that are coming down to the last minute, like where if you get an offensive rebound, then you just dribble out the clock. You're not going to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
and the 3-point line's great. The 3-point line's great.
In fact, they moved it further back. I think they should have moved it even more further back. But whatever. Maybe they'll do that next year and 2 years from now. So
they're using the FIBA line right now,
which is still closer than the NBA line.
Yeah. But did you see, like, on the court yesterday, you could see the two lines, right? Because it's the way the court was designed.
Yeah.
In the corner, it's only a matter of inches, the difference.
Right, because, otherwise you're going to be out of bounds.
Yeah, the corner shot is almost the same, but it's when you get around the arc and then the shot straight ahead where it's much more noticeable how far back it is. Okay, sweet. Love it. Before we sign off, remember, you can listen and subscribe to new and archived episodes of the Skip and Josh podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and of course, Spotify. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We would love to hear from you via email, skipandjoshshow@gmail.com, via Twitter @skipandjosh, or by liking and following our Facebook page. As always, you can get all the links to everything I just talked about on our website, skipandjosh.com.
We leave you with this.
You have anything that you want to end the show with, Josh?
I just feel like I'm a sucker.
A sucker? How come?
I feel like my entire life I'm a sucker because I've been following sports my entire life and I let it consume every waking moment. And I agonize over teams and players, my favorite teams, my favorite players, my fantasy teams. And I feel like such a sucker because I care so much sometimes about who wins and who loses and for what reason. Because
none.
The athletes who are actually playing in the games, they don't care anywhere near as much as I do. And they're the ones who are getting paid. So I shouldn't care at all. And so I'm seriously considering...
Don't you think they care?
I'm seriously considering just not caring about it anymore at all.
Well, it's interesting because we always said this was a show about how sports affects us. And maybe over the last 3 years of doing this podcast, you've done some soul searching and realized that, like, it's affecting you too much, right?
And, like, seriously, like, the most recent example is, so the Leafs won their first game with their new coach, and they interviewed the players afterwards, and there was a lot of rumors before the firing that Mike Babcock didn't get along with Austin Matthews, and he didn't give him enough ice time, and maybe all that is true, and who the hell knows, and who the hell cares? And you know what, Austin Matthews,
Tyson Berry, supposedly didn't get along.
Well, and Austin Matthews also. So Austin Matthews is an extremely talented hockey player. But every time I hear him open his mouth, he seems like such a jerk that you just want to punch in the face.
I agree, actually.
Like...
That's how he seemed like a nice guy or a smart guy. Yeah.
He seems like such a jerk. And, like, why do I care if he gets enough ice time or not? Why do I care how many goals he scores? Why do I care if the Leafs win or lose? Why do I care if the Canadians win or lose? Why do I care? I don't understand. Why do I care about it? Because whether they win or lose, it doesn't affect me in any way. It shouldn't affect me in any way.
Yeah. Well, sports is supposed to be a distraction. It's entertainment. It's supposed to distract you from everyday life, from whatever's going on. It's supposed to be entertaining you. And I hope that it can, like, for me, it's like, let it entertain me. I love talking about it. It's like it's just stuff that's out there. Rather talk about this than talk about politics.
Politics is another thing. Ugh.
Yeah, don't even get me started with that.
No.
All right, so I'm going to leave you with something silly. All right, you mentioned Zlatan Ibrahimovic on the top of the show, right?
I didn't.
Here's the quote. You didn't?
I didn't mention Zlatan.
No, you mentioned You mentioned MLS. I'm sorry, you mentioned the MLS.
I mentioned Thierry Henry.
Right. So Zlatan had his final game. He had his farewell to the LA Galaxy with this tweet that I'm about to read to you. I came, I saw, I conquered. Thank you, LA Galaxy, for making me feel alive again. To the Galaxy fans, you wanted Zlatan, I gave you Zlatan. You are welcome. The story continues. Now go back to watching baseball.
I love that quote.
Drop the mic.
I love that quote. I remember seeing it the day it came out.
Yeah.
And I've told you before that this guy is one of my favorite athletes because he's one of the few people who actually says what is on his mind and not makes up some kind of fabricated response. So good for
Right.
him for doing that. And I mean, this guy could play on my team any day of the week.
Absolutely. I mean, he backs it up on the field, right? I mean, I know he's playing in the lower league of the MLS, but he came there and he did what he did, you know? He also thinks a lot of himself, which is a little bit entertaining for all of us.
He does, but he backs it up because he produces.
Of course, yeah.
So you may have heard this yesterday. Former NFL kicker Fred Cox, he died yesterday at the age of 80. Did you hear this?
No?
So normally I wouldn't mention this because I've never heard of Fred Cox, and former athletes die all the time, unfortunately, and it's really not a big deal. The only reason I'm mentioning this is, so this guy played for the Minnesota Vikings, I don't know how many years, so unfortunately he died yesterday. But the reason I'm mentioning it is because in 1972, this is the guy who invented the Nerf football.
Oh, the Nerf football. I was wondering why Nerf was trending on Twitter one day. I didn't understand.
Well, now you know.
Amazing.
I didn't know.
And then I found out what Nerf stands for. Did you see what Nerf stands for?
I don't know what it stands for, but I didn't know that it was invented in 1972. I thought it was came out in the 80s. And I also didn't know that it was invented by an NFL player.
Non-expanding recreational foam.
Okay.
Take that.
Fine.
Pretty amazing. All right, we'll leave you with Nerf. That's how we're going to end the show, with Nerf.
Yeah.
Good. All right, so hopefully next week, see how it goes. If not, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Okay, talk to you next time.
Okay, bye.